The number one question I get asked by every single couple is, how do I save money on this goddamn wedding? Well, don't worry, I am literally here to answer that for you. My name's Georgie, I'm a wedding planner and coordinator based in the UK, giving you all of the information that you need to plan your wedding. So let's start with the most obvious one. The easiest way to save money on your wedding is by reducing that guest list. I know that's difficult. I know that it means getting rid of people. I know that it means cutting out family or friends and maybe starting arguments. But if budget is an issue or you're looking to save money, the quickest way to do that is by cutting those numbers. 120 people times anything equals a lot. Canapes are, I don't know, £9. 9 times 120 people is £1,080. That's before they've even sat down for food. Let alone then charger plates, napkins, cutlery, tables, centerpieces, name cards, transport, accommodation, chairs. The list goes on and on and on. So the less people you have, the less that costs. Obviously. There are a few ways of getting around this. So if you think that you have got 120 guests that you definitely need at your wedding, let's consider evening invites. For your evening guests, typically you're only going to provide them with evening food. Evening food is probably £10. So if we're adding 60 people in the evening at £10, it's going to cost us £600 to have all those people. To have daytime guests, the number is more likely to be around £100 odd, times 60 is £6,000. Obviously, they're coming to the evening, it's different, but is there a way that you can put more effort into the evening? Can you invite them a little bit earlier? Can you make sure they feel special? Can you do an intimate daytime? Just remember that the amount of people that you're having is going to be times by the amount of things that you're having, which tends to equal a lot of money. Number 2 is your food and drink choices. How much are you going to give each person? So if we can't reduce the amount of guests that are coming, can we reduce that cost per person? Easy ways to reduce the cost per person are things like not having a starter. I always recommend to my couples that are trying to sort of shave some costs, scrap the starter and have canapes. If you're trying to choose between those, canapes is for the win every single time. When guests then sit down and have a full 2-course meal, they are still pretty happy, especially if it's like carby and hearty food, you'll be fine. Also think about other food items during the day. Do you need to have a wedding cake? Are you having dessert? If you're having a cake, can we get rid of the dessert and have cake instead? If you're having dessert, you could argue you don't need the cake. Again, another really good way of saving some money without compromising on the whole day. So we thought about food, let's think about drink. What can you offer people that shows that you've cared about them and you've provided drinks throughout the day, but also still manage to save yourself some money? Typically on a wedding, you would provide drinks, reception drinks for your guests, wine on the tables and toast drinks. So if you want to save budget, stick to those minimums. Therefore, 2 drinks during the drink reception, half a bottle of wine per person on the tables and a toast drink, something like Prosecco. If drink is not the most important thing to you, don't allocate a huge amount of your budget to it. Just make sure you're giving them what they're expecting, which is the ones we've just discussed, and don't look to then add on a cocktail hour or tea and coffee and drinks like that. Number 3, this is a controversial one, but shorten your day. Typically, a wedding will last anywhere between 10 and 12 hours. That is a long amount of time to feed and water people. So if you want to look at ways to save money on your wedding, cut that day down. Now, I said it was controversial, but you could do something like a 4 p.m. ceremony, which would then mean your food in the evening would probably be around 8 p.m, which you could then argue means you don't need to provide another meal later on. You could opt for things like street food, where people go to vans. This would mean that then when they sit down at tables, they're maybe not expecting the wine to be provided for them. You can have a bar that's open, you can give reception drinks when they arrive, and then it's over to them. But it does mean that you've spent a lot of money on a day that's a lot shorter. Pros and cons. A little top tip within a tip. If your wedding breakfast finishes later than 8:30 p.m, then I would argue that you don't need to provide any evening food. If it finishes earlier than that and you're partying on until midnight, you would probably need something else in the evening to just soak up that alcohol. Carbs are our friend. Number 4, what can you DIY? DIY is not a scary word. Don't be too alarmed when I say it, but there are definitely ways that you can save money on your wedding by doing things yourself. For example, decor. Can you make things that you can then use for decor instead of sourcing it from another company? Cake. Can somebody make the cake? Do you want a cake? Can they make cupcakes instead? Do you know someone that makes brownies? Or signage. Signage is the easiest thing to DIY for your wedding and can save you a huge chunk of money. You need to learn to love Canva. And if you would like a whole Canva tutorial on how to do stationery for your wedding, let me know in the comments. When you have got a 2-year engagement, DIY is our friend. We like to try, we like to practice. Are there things you can learn in the meantime? Can you learn calligraphy? Can you learn to embroider napkins? The world is your oyster. Use that time, stop scrolling on Pinterest, learn a new skill, preferably a skill that can save you money on the wedding. And number 5, this is probably the most important tip I can give you on how to save money for your wedding. Intentional spending. I know, I can hear you going, what are you on about? Intentional spending is going to be very different for every single couple. You need to sit down as a couple and figure out what is important to you guys. If you both say food and drink are our most important things, do not look to save money on those places. That is where your money is being spent, and that is what is important to you. By figuring out what your most important elements of the wedding are, you can start to then see which ones are not as important, and this is where we look to save money. So for every element that you want to save money on, there are quick-fire ways to do that, which I will give you some examples of now. Not fussed on decor, that is fine. Maybe try and DIY some that we said earlier, but equally just allocate enough money to cover the centerpieces and some kind of backdrop or feature for your ceremony. You can also reuse decor. Any decor that you've had in the ceremony can then be put into the wedding breakfast room and into the evening as well. If cake isn't that important to you, then don't have one. Or if mum really wants to see you cut something, get a single tier from a supermarket, decorate it a little bit and cut that one. Also shout out to all the couples that have Colin the Caterpillar cakes because they look great. If drink is not that important to you, then just go for those key drinks that we talked about and don't add any frills to it. Alcohol is alcohol, people will be pleased either way. If you're not really fussed on food, that's fine. Scrap the starters, have your wedding cake as dessert and just go for something cheap and cheerful in the evening. A band or entertainment, not your thing? Cool, don't have it. Go for a playlist, go for a DJ. If your guests aren't gonna dance and you know your guests more than anybody else does, do not allocate a huge chunk of money to that area that is just going to go over to everybody's heads, and it therefore won't be appreciated. I hope that helps. The biggest tip I can give you when it comes to saving money is to really figure out where your priorities lie. You can get all the tips in the world on the internet about how to save money on your wedding, but do not cut costs on the things that are most important to you. So you want a little bonus bit of the video. Okay, here are 10 quick tips for saving money on your wedding. But again, do not cut costs on what's important to you. Number 1, consider a midweek wedding. This will absolutely save money on most venues. Number 2 is consider getting married all at the same venue. Without having to move guests, you don't have to pay for transport, you don't have to worry about additional costs, all at the same venue. Number 3 is shop for sample gowns or off the rack. These have only usually been worn by people that are trying on dresses in the shop, but can definitely save you some money. Number 4 is borrow accessories. Does your friend have a veil that they got married in? Can you use it as your something borrowed, but also save some money? Number 5 is skip the champagne. Does anybody notice the difference between champagne and Prosecco? If you don't, they won't. Sack it off. Number 6, go digital on your invites. You don't need to send anything out. You don't need to pay for stamps. You don't need to print anything. Put it all online and send them to the website, which are also free, by the way. Number 7 is maybe opt for somewhere that isn't already a wedding venue. Can you make your village hall look epic? Can you make your home look great? Can you put some sort of structure up in your garden? Number 8, scrap the wedding favors. Nobody cares, nobody notices. Get rid of those immediately. Number 9 is the month you get married. Would you consider a January wedding? Because that will save you a hella chunk of money. And number 10 is consider not having a bridal party. If you're not paying for bridesmaid dresses and groomsmen suits, that will also save a chunk. I hope that helps. Make sure if you know any ways to save money on your wedding, you pop them in the comments below, because we don't gatekeep here, we're helping everybody. And make sure you subscribe and hit that notification button so you get told every time I'm back telling you all about weddings.